All right, I will call this Ridgway Workforce and Affordable Housing Committee meeting to order Monday, August 28, 2023. I guess we need a roll call, please.
Holly Kroger here, Kevin Grantley
Here.
Beth Lakin here, Terry Schuyler
Here.
JT Thomas is not present, Russ Meyer is not present, John Clark.
Here. Okay, we start off with a public hearing, consideration of a request for exemption from the Ridgway Wetterhorn Homes Affordable Housing Regulations and Guidelines. Paragraph 3.1.1.1, qualified employee from Alicia Bresky, however you say. And I'm not sure who's starting that up. Are you starting that up, President?
Yeah, I'll kind of lay this out a little bit and turn it over to Ross, if that's okay with you here.
Yep.
First of all, thank you everybody for taking some time on a Monday evening, first day of school for some, so really do appreciate it. So to go back, as you all know, this project consists of 14 units. Initial sales lottery process is complete. There are 11 homes under contract for sale. Immediately after the lottery, IDS waited, I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks, give or take, to allow locals that didn't require an exception request to apply to purchase on a first come first served basis. Then IDS accepted requests for exceptions for a short window that closed this last Thursday, August 24th. So at this point, 3 units remain unaccounted for. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's 3 units still. The hope was to get more than one exception request before you this evening. But again, before you is just the one applicant. My understanding there was an applicant that was unable to get their application completed by that August 24th deadline. So maybe forthcoming for sure. So again, that's it, one application for you tonight in a public hearing setting. Then we'll have a conversation about what the approach should be for the remaining units. That makes sense. That work session action item there on the agenda. Happy to answer any questions, but with that, I'll turn it over to Ross to spearhead the public hearing portion.
Thanks, Preston. Go ahead, Russ.
Good evening, council. Thanks again for having me here. This is going to be really similar to kind of the exception request we did during the lottery phase in some ways. And so you all have the memo that I sent last week. We have Alicia Bresky. She's a full-time year-round employee at the Alpine Lodge in Telluride. She has a significant amount of time in the region, both in Telluride and in Montrose, with 20 years on and off and 10 years of continuous residency in the region as well. We had the opportunity to review her application materials. She submitted them in a timely manner, was very forthcoming with her need for an exception, and is requesting an exception to the minimum work standard as a qualified employee. As you all may recall, this exception is based on the employment being outside of the Ridgway School District boundary. There is that minimum requirement that is specific to the Ridgway School District boundary. And so they are requesting the possibility for an exception as they're looking for housing in the region. They have been a caretaker for the last couple of years for a close family member and are currently living with their aunt in Placerville. And so before you is Alicia's Bresky's request. It is staff's recommendation that the committee consider approval of this request based on the fact that Preston mentioned and alluded to earlier that we've had a 5-week period where exception-only applications have been accepted, and there's only been a handful of those applications that have come in, with one that has been denied due to ineligibility according to the guidelines that requires an exception but actually isn't allowed, without getting into too much detail. So are there any questions that you all have about this exception request?
Kind of. We turned down a similar exception request during the lottery process. Was that individual reached out to again Okay, just so we're being
Yes.
consistent here.
Yeah, the two individuals that you had a similar request on, those individuals were reached out to let them know that there was the opportunity to apply and also to look at other opportunities in Norwood as well.
Okay, thank you.
In the memo, where you provide some language for proving, there's a list of 2 identified possible exceptions and then 2 just as other. Do either of the 2 that are listed there apply to this approval?
Yeah, and so we wanted to give you all a little flexibility to say, and give it kind of, provide a little bit of structure really in the decision. And so there's kind of 2 different options that are before you. You can deny based on the box that's marked in your memo, or you can approve. It could be based on the first reason, the second reason, both. And the other 2 boxes are in case you all say, look, we don't agree with the first 2, but we have our own ideas as far as why we want to approve this request.
Okay, that answer your question, Terry?
Yeah, so we could choose the first 2 to be technically compliant here, but
Either one, or
or
we don't need to approve, we don't need to choose more than one necessarily. We just need to have a reason.
and the first one has an unspecified date range in it. So
That's what we'd be looking at you all. Keep in mind that this only grants the individual the exception to be able to apply. It doesn't actually, guarantee a home. So.
Next step is they try to get a mortgage and qualify
Yeah.
for financing.
Yeah, and as you all know, part of the application is getting a pre-qualification, and so they're well on their way. Their application materials have been received, accepted, and approved. But there still needs to be the contracting phase, and they still need to secure the mortgage at the end of the day.
So I guess Sarah's question is, what would be a good number in your guys' book for that blank? How many days from today's date? 30 days, 90 days?
Paul, you've been dealing with kind of a little bit more of the contracting process. Do you have a good sense of what would make sense?
I think the goal line is move in, which we hope to be mid-October. So if you give them a 90-day window, I would certainly overlap that.
Okay. That answer your question, Terry?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Ross? Okay, as a public hearing, I think I'll give Alicia opportunity to weigh in. She's on Zoom, I see, and
Wonderful.
Alicia, I apologize for butchering your name in the beginning of this, but welcome, and feel free to give us whatever further information you'd like to.
Hi, everybody. You didn't butcher it too bad. Don't worry. I'm always used to my name being mispronounced.
I can imagine.
Yeah. I guess I just wanted to weigh in and just say what I included in my application for the exception is, I have been here for a really long time. I spend every single weekend in Ridgway, either paddling at the reservoir or, hanging out, getting coffee and lunch with friends, shopping. I really just enjoy the community as a whole. It feels like real people live there. And it's just a nice community to be in. And I'd really enjoy to be a part of that community as a full-time resident if I was accepted.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
I guess I'll ask for public comment now. Since this is a public hearing, I'll open it up for public comment, either anybody else online. I guess it's just Kevin online. Anybody in the room have any comments, questions? No? Okay, so I'll close the public hearing and bring it back up here for deliberation. As Beth mentioned, this is tricky because we've already turned down a couple exception requests similar to this. This one's a little different.
No, it's really not. The only difference is now that we don't have other applicants. My feeling is still the same, that it's not the job of Ridgway or Ridgway's taxpayers to build housing and subsidize housing that's going to go to Telluride workers. However, in order to do projects like this, we have to sell all the homes. And that's actually what's changed. The I spend every weekend in Ridgway was actually the exact same thing we heard from other people in the exception hearing. It doesn't really move me on that stance. but we're at a different point in the timeline of this process.
Anybody else?
I guess a question I have is, Alicia, are you at all interested or willing to change jobs? And, you know, fit into this within the Ridgway School District bubble? I do have some reservations. We did, you know, deny several people because of them living in Telluride or Placerville, and my gut wants us to promote Ridgway, then Uray County, and then the Tri-County area. And this is nothing against you as a human, it's just the area in which we are trying to serve.
Well, of course, I completely understand. If there were options in Telluride, I would be applying for those. There are not,
Housing. Right.
yeah, there's just not affordable housing. To be honest, the reason I work in Telluride is just because my aunt provided me a home, like a room in her home to stay. And I found a job in Telluride. It was just, 30 minutes away drive for me. It was easy. If I could find a job in Ridgway that I really enjoyed and it, obviously paid enough, I would deeply consider it. Absolutely. I'm curious if, those other people that were denied, did they reapply during this exception process to, so that they could have a fair chance as well?
That was my first question to Impact Development Services. It sounds like they reached out to them and they're not here now, but they did, which makes me feel better.
They were made aware of the opportunity to ask again, essentially.
Okay.
And there's opportunities in Norwood as well.
Mm.
Ross, I mean, is this public here?
Well, I think we can
Yeah,
actually vote if,
We're up for deliberation now.
yes,
So.
if council wants to ask Ross questions, that's okay.
so, I know you guys have been trying to advertise. Have there been people who just haven't, like you said, there were some people who haven't finished their application? Are we talking about some barriers to folks here in the county that aren't getting their applications completed? I know I knew some people who kind of considered it and then got bogged down in the process and didn't finish, or got notifications and didn't follow through. So can you give me some idea on some of those barriers people are having to completion?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different items. And just so you all know, in addition to advertising in the Plain Dealer, I also just on my personal Facebook account went up kind of some of these community groups that we have on Facebook just to kind of try to get the word out and got some flyers up around the town as well, just to see if there would be some traction that way. But generally what we're seeing is that there are folks that might have some interest, but they might not be able to qualify on the mortgage side. It's kind of challenging right now, considering the level of interest rates. And if you can't really climb into like one of the products that are offered due to being a low income family, it can be hard to navigate the prices that currently stand, since these are a little bit on the higher end as far as the project goes. Some other folks generally just make significantly more than what's allowed in the project. And so those are probably the main obstacles that I'm seeing, is that there's an income limit issue and there's no exception that's allowed for that. It cannot be allowed. And then there's also the issue of not really super competitive mortgage products that kind of can make this feasible for some individuals.
And just anecdotally, I've heard some folks in Uray who work in Uray and they're kind of, I'm gonna hold out. There's a whole bunch of homes coming in, not super interested in moving to Ridgway.
Anecdotally as well, there's some folks that I talk to and they're like, oh, what do you do? They're like, oh, I help out with these homes. And they're like, oh, we're waiting for them.
And I've thrown out, I was like, you might be lottery up there too. You should.
Yeah.
But just, yeah.
Interesting.
I do think these 3 homes on the upper end of the income scale are tricky. When you start talking about kind of that upper end of the spectrum versus affordability, we're really talking about a pretty niche window here.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. As you said, we don't want to be hamstringing the developer by, keeping the project from being successful. But at the same time, we have our goals that we're trying to achieve, so it's kind of between a rock and a hard place on this.
I just,
Seems like these guys have done their best to try to live within our goals. We're just getting to the point where we're on the fringes of those goals.
I just really feel weird about spending Ridgway tax dollars to subsidize and help out and make a project work. And
To Polly's point, Alicia, I happen to know that there's at least one, maybe two job openings at SMPA. Which could be a 5-minute walk from the housing.
yeah, and
Sorry, you were really echoey. What did you ask me?
No, I was actually disclaiming that there's going to be 1 to 2 job openings at San Miguel Powell, which is a 5-minute walk from the hospital.
Ooh, that would be convenient.
And that is actually, all jokes aside, a valid point.
Yeah.
Like a 40+ minute commute to Telluride gets old after a while.
Sure.
Yeah. Any applicant that we approve that fits these income requirements is going to be incentivized to look for a job, if not in the Ridgway School District, within the county.
Yep.
Because there are job openings here. We all know that. We know that people can't find people to work. So that maybe that's something we need to grapple with, is there is incentive if you can cut those transportation costs and work here within the county for, potential people, even if, even if they're not saying, I absolutely want to do that right now, like, there is an incentive to do that.
And the bottom line is we can't force them to do that, but we can indicate that it's our preference and that hopefully they'll find something. I mean, your point is a good one, that should we approve this exception and she gives financing and moves into one of those homes, there's going to be built-in incentive for her to look for a job in the county. So,
Like I said, I have a lot of reservations about this. I feel like we've got this one, and I would imagine we can expect to see a couple more come in for the other homes if we approve it. However, I guess as long as we all can look around and say, this has been well advertised to our community. We did that lottery back in June. Like, this has been a long process where folks who are interested could have spoke up.
I know a handful of folks in town that didn't meet any of the requirements because they made too much money. And I would rather see these homes go toward a neighborhood local that didn't make quite the money, that might not have quite the opportunities. And so I'm okay with this one. I know everything we've just talked about and everything you've just said, and we've covered a lot of ground, but at the same time, this is a great project. It's really helping some folks, and we should move forward with it. Grant this one.
And Alicia appears to be, genuinely interested in remaining in this community.
Yeah.
Circumstances have taken her out, and so forth. I agree.
And I feel better knowing that you guys reached back out to those other applicants.
Yeah.
That was my first, you gotta do a little pause here, but thank you for asking that as well.
well, I feel like I'm hearing consensus that although we're not totally comfortable with all the details behind it and the fact that this isn't somebody who actually works in the county, that
And I think we can delve into that a little more in the next item too, John.
yeah, I agree. So someone ready to make a motion?
No, real quick, sorry, let me read
Yeah,
these
go ahead.
conditions. It was kind of. Yeah, and if the applicant's employment status changes to Ray County, all the better. But yeah, I think it sounds good to me. Based on the findings of fact noted above, I move to grant an exception to the applicant Alicia Brisky to guidelines 3.1.1.1 qualified employee to the physical performance of employee in the school district boundaries conditioned upon the following. Exception is granted for a limited time and should the applicant not close on a RWH housing unit pursuant to the guidelines within 90 days of today's date, this exception shall be null and void. Should applicant's employment status change between today's date and closing, applicant is required to notify administrator of such change within 5 days of said change.
Second.
All right, motion made by Beth, seconded by Terry. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, there you go. Congratulations, Alicia.
Good luck.
Yeah.
SMPA.com.
Shameless self-promotion, shameless.
All right, that brings us to the second item on our agenda, which is a request from Letterhorn Homes to change the protocol for exception requests for the affordable housing units in Ridgway Letterhorn project. Take it away, Ross. This is not a public hearing.
All right, so we figured we'd try to save you a little bit of meeting time today by trying to knock out a couple different items. And so thanks for your time for the exception request. This is a little bit separate in the sense that we wanted to present to you the opportunity to potentially consider exception requests in a different format in the future. So as it currently stands, what we're looking at is very similar type meetings. We have potentially a window, folks can apply, we get an exception request in, and then at that point, we will find a time in the near future to be able to hear those exception requests. And so one of the potential solutions that we're presenting you today for your consideration is allowing administrative authority to grant exceptions to applicants based on certain conditions. And so you'll see, and I won't bog you all down in all the different details that are in the memo, but you'll see that some potential solutions that we've kind of come up with are on that number 1 on that second page, third page. And that comes down to essentially moving to delegate administrative authority to IDS, Impact Development Services, being the administrator, to approve minimum work standard exceptions. And so the way that could take shape is presented in those kind of 4 boxes, where it could be, maybe they meet the minimum work standard, but they live outside the Ridgway school district boundary. And that would be, very broad, could be anybody from anywhere. Applicant works in Ridgway County is a condition that would be acceptable. They work in Montrose County, they work in San Miguel County. Similar to the previous memo as well, we wanted to allow you all the opportunity to also set forward your own conditions. And so there's kind of this second opportunity to say, I move to delegate authority to the administrator to approve X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's not related to the minimum work standard, maybe it's related to something else, but it's a barrier, or it's something that maybe isn't quite as significant to you all. And then you can attach your conditions as well. There's also an expiration that you can place on that, or we can just continue to allow that authority until it's rescinded by the committee. Are there any questions after reading through that memo?
No, but I got strong opinions.
As expected.
I figured there'd be some opinions. But no, I mean, the request is straightforward. I think we all have concerns about it, so.
Well, I think one thing that we've already discussed is administrative approval of Ridgway County residents and not holding this. I think that's something we've talked about that I would actually like to see is
I
like,
agree. I agree.
let's throw Ridgway County residents and there is an administrative exception.
I believe that requires an amendment to our protocol, right?
Yes.
Different than what you've asked for here.
No,
this is it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think, I mean, maybe this is what you're thinking, but I'd be totally fine with administrative approval of in-county residents outside of Ridgway School District, but not necessarily anyone else.
I'm happy to convene
I
this
don't think
board
that's
to
what
hear
you're
the
asking.
others.
You're asking for total administrative approval, temporary.
I'm open to the possibilities.
You're
Again, I'm
flexible.
here at the service of the committee, and so,
Does everybody understand the difference between what we're talking about here?
Another option, John, is to give them administrative approval until the end of the year
Yeah,
to get them filled. Because we have offered that opportunity to Uray County residents and Ridgway residents. And then bring that authority back to this group, which I'm totally open to discussion, but that is not, Uray County, as far as I'm concerned, that's one that should be in here until rescinded. But the others, that's where I think we need to have a discussion is potentially with where we are in the process, maybe giving that approval for a period.
because of the need to fill those last 2 units, yeah.
So it seems like we all agree about Ray County being, included. What about a hierarchy of the other two counties after that?
No. I want, in the long term, I want this board to sit here and again reiterate the Ridgway public dollars that did get contributed to the project and our commitment to Ridgway folks being in them. And if that means that we have to sit here and hear those here, like, that's important to me.
Same.
Yeah. So Terry, she just dismissed your request.
Sorry, I just.
I knew she was before.
And I would just add, just further response to your suggestion, I can't imagine how to set up a hierarchy of other counties. Like,
Just by choice,
I know, but to me, there has to be some sort of basis, and I can't imagine what that basis is. I mean, do we give Montrose County people higher preference than San Miguel?
That's where I was going to lead.
That's where I figured that's where you're headed, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, so.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair to have a hierarchy of counties, but I do think that I would feel comfortable with giving administrative leave for Uray County for sure, but the other two.
And a further, like what Beth's suggesting,
Yes.
further approval for administrative approvals through the end of the year, say.
Let's handle this separately. Do we all agree Uray County should be an administrative exception?
Thumbs
Cool.
up, yes.
Okay. How do we feel about a temporary administrative approval on outside of county?
Well, based on what we just did for Alicia, I think that it makes sense. We're basically saying these guys are up against, between a rock and a hard place to get these last 2 units filled, assuming Alicia can get the one. So we should allow them to get those filled as quickly as possible, administrative.
What are the timing constraints that we're looking at to help?
If I could. make-
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, man. So Paul Major with Rural Homes. So part of this is to be very transparent and fair with potential buyers.
Yeah.
And so it's a little confusing if we go, well, you can, basically get under contract if you live in Uray, but if you don't, you need to get an exception.
Mhm.
We can't tell you when the exception is going to happen because we don't really know what the trap line of the interest is from Uray County. So that's why we kind of like to have a temporary blanket exception for Uray and San Miguel, because we think that's going to be where, the interest is going to be. And, frankly, be very transparent and fair that, this is we have to meet everything else. But what we're trying to do is get these last 2 homes sold and moved in by October 15th. So it's a little bit, just taking a step back, it's a little bit about being fair and clear and transparent to potential home buyers.
Well, that's kind of what we're proposing
I
giving
think
you.
that's what I was gonna say.
And that's why I'm speaking in support of it.
Yeah.
Because-
Yeah.
You're not misunderstanding what we're saying.
Okay.
You're saying, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think there's consensus that you're in a tough spot. You need to get those last 2 homes sold. But we want to make sure it's really clear that in county is our preference. And that we'd like to see part of the process, should there be future turnover. So permanently on that basis. That makes sense? So do we probably need a motion to do that?
Should we do those separately since one we want to do with an ending date and one not? Bo?
Yeah, I like that approach because if you're gonna do a blanket exception for Uray County, that's just standing. And then if you're doing the temporary exception for other counties for time, that would be my preference.
Quick question, Paul, do you think that to the end of the year is gonna be adequate? Okay.
It seemed neat and tidy.
It seems pretty clean, yeah.
Okay, so I move to delegate the authority to the administrator to approve minimum work standard exceptions for Ridgway, Wetterhorn deed restricted units with the following conditions. Applicants meet all the requirements of the covenant and guidelines except the minimum work standards. Applicants meet the minimum work standard outside the Ridgway School District, and applicants work in Uray County. Said assignment shall continue until rescinded.
Second.
All right, motion by Beth, second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
And then I move to delegate the authority of the administrator to approve minimum work standard exceptions for Ridgway, Wetterhorn deed restricted units with the following conditions. Applicants must meet the requirements of the covenant and guidelines except the minimum work standard. Applicants meet the minimum work standard outside the Ridgway School District. Applicants work in Uray County. Applicants work in Montrose County. Applicants work in San Miguel County. Said assignment shall expire December 31st, 2023.
Second.
Motion by Beth, seconded by Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Beth's acting like she wants to be mayor. All right, are we done? Anything else? All right,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Thank you, guys. Good luck. We're excited.
Nice work, man.
Hey.
You wanted to go home and have dinner, didn't you?
I need to go for a run. I haven't been for a run yet.